the tech industry is going through a fairly significant transformation, I believe.
Today on the Daily Scoop podcast from the Scoop News Group, how U.S. Customs and Border Protection is driving AI adoption. CBP Chief Technologist Sunil Madhugiri joins the podcast to discuss that and more. It's Tuesday, October 1st, 2024. Welcome to the Daily Scoop podcast, where you'll hear the latest news and trends facing government leaders. I'm the host of the Daily Scoop podcast, Billy Mitchell. Thanks so much for joining me. Here are today's top headlines. With ransomware gangs proving capable of quickly reconstituting after government takedown operations, an international alliance wants to ramp up those offensive measures even more. And Neuberger, Deputy National Security Advisor for Cyber and Emerging Technology, told reporters in a call Monday that the U.S. has observed that there is no one operation that's going to disrupt ransomware permanently, and instead the nation must increase the frequency and increase the breadth of operations combating ransomware, such as targeting the exchanges that are facilitating money laundering and ransomware activity. Neuberger's comments previewed meetings this week of the Counter Ransomware Initiative, a U.S.-created organization now composed of 68 countries. The summit's first 2 days will focus on disruption operations and policy, Neuberger said, and a third day will focus on the nexus of AI and cyber defense, with presentations from government agencies and leading AI companies. In other news, a service created by the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency to spur the sharing of cyber threat indicators and defensive measures is floundering due to a lack of outreach, according to a new watchdog report. The Department of Homeland Security's Office of the Inspector General found that the use of CISA's automated indicator sharing system has fallen to its lowest level since 2017, with a 93% decline in sharing of cyber threat indicators from 2020 to 2022. CISA partially attributed that drop to an incoming federal partner that stopped sharing information due to, quote, unspecified security concerns with transferring information from its current system to AIS. However, the OIG found fault with the cyber agency for not having an outreach strategy to recruit and retain data producers, going against a provision in the Cybersecurity Information Sharing Act of 2015 that called on the DHS secretary to facilitate and promote threat intel sharing. For more news at the intersection of the federal government and technology, visit fedscoop.com. Many politicians, lawmakers, and others have pointed to U.S. border security as a mission that could greatly benefit from artificial intelligence technology. In fact, just last week, the House passed a bill that would require the Department of Homeland Security to explore how artificial intelligence and other emerging technologies could be used to secure the border. But that assumes that Customs and Border Protection isn't already exploring and adopting AI, which, according to CTO Sunil Madhugiri, it is. In a wide-ranging interview, Madhugiri discusses CBP's developing AI portfolio, how the emerging technology landscape is evolving, what else is top of mind for the agency heading into 2025, and much more. Let's now go to that interview with CBP's Sunil Madhugiri. Sunil, thanks so much for joining me. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Billy, for having me today. Good morning, everybody.
Well, I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I know you play a really key role within a very hands-on, mission-oriented agency at CBP. But, you know, we were just talking ahead of time, ahead of this conversation in the background, trying to kind of figure out what we're going to talk about. And you said something really interesting that you wanted to talk about. And I think it's the perfect place to start our conversation. And you mentioned, and we are all aware of it, and we're all experiencing it every day, but the tech industry is going through a major transformation. That's what you told me. Let's start there and give me your thoughts on that and sort of how that's driving what you're doing as the CTO of the Customs and Border Protection.
Yeah, no, thank you, Billy, first of all, for having me. Yes, to what I mentioned earlier, the tech industry is going through a fairly significant transformation, I believe. If you look at some of the history of, the .com of the world, early 2000s, when the Web 1.0 was on, and we transformed to cloud-based application, which was Web 2.0 components, which came on board. A lot of work has done there. We have transformed applications. In most of the cases, the refactoring was done for the applications and on the data side also, and that was Web 2.0. When Web 3.0, is, as it's getting hold right now. But what is happening is, I think in November 2022, one of the companies, I won't take any name, but that company kind of changed the way we do business. But here's the thing which is very interesting. Other companies also had something similar going, but nobody had announced it officially, right? But I think what is happening is there was a lot of demand for software engineering and other technical jobs. But if you needed to do something creative or create something quickly, or you needed either to be very technical, or you learned some coding skills, or you go ahead and hire software engineers to do work for you. But in that including creating reports and dashboarding and all that kind of things. But what is happening is, because of this transformational with generative AI, LLM, large language models, which are in place now, or they call the transform models. Because of that, I think the shift has happened where a regular person who doesn't have to be very technical can go and start doing stuff for themselves and creating content, which is very, very good content, right? So, Mr. Jensen, who's the CEO of NVIDIA, I don't like taking company name, but in this particular case, it makes sense. He was saying the kids who are being taught in schools, hey, do computer science as a major, right? Which is still the case. It's awesome. You need to do those kind of things. But that now what's happening is anybody can learn this stuff and start creating content, and he's completely right. And we are seeing the transformation happening within the industry. It not only affects the folks who are on the creating side, but also on the tech components. Also, we are seeing that, right? We are seeing the venture capitalist money moving to certain areas within the tech industry. I have a significant experience in the tech industry. I've been for 30 years. I was there before I joined the government. So I can say for a fact that these changes are happening right in front of eyes. So what I'm trying to do in CBP is, how do we take these transformation components and start applying to our mission on a daily basis? And that part, Billy, is the critical for me. Only one thing matters to us. When we wake up in the morning, I tell my team every day, only one thing matters. How do we make sure our agents and officers in the field have the tools to do their jobs, right? We are responsible. We are CBP's 65,000 strong agency, and our job is to keep the country safe and to promote legal trade and legal travel in the United States. That's what we do. We're responsible for trillions of dollars of imports coming to the United States, and also responsible for every traveling public coming to the United States, also within the U.S., right? So we have a big mission. And how do we do that? My job is to making sure, how do we take some of these tools and start giving it out to the officers and agents? I'll give you a quick example. I think this will kind of cement as to what I was speaking earlier, Billy. Is think about documentation or policy documentation, right? Those policy documentation are legal documents, right? People coming to the United States, our officers in the ports of entry, they look at the documents and look at rules and regulations as to what needs to be followed. But if I have a tool where, rather than looking at paper-based documentation information, where I can retrieve information very quickly for that officer to look at, and cite that, make sure the citation of the document, make sure it's picking the right component. We truly believe in no hallucination cannot be the part of our architecture, right? Things like that is what we are working on. So this transformation is going to go across the board. It's just not only CBP. You'll see across this board. But in our case, we have to be ahead of bad elements, and there are a lot of bad actors who are trying to harm us, and that's our job, is to make sure that we stay ahead. And this transformation, I think, is going to help industry and agencies like CBP.
Yeah, and that's tremendous to hear the way you're processing and thinking about, it as, both a part of the world, but also a part of your role at CBP. I'm curious, I like many agencies, I'm sure AI is not new. But this latest iteration seems like it's a whole different ballgame. So how are you thinking about evolving the way that CBP addresses AI, particularly as generative AI and those LLMs have come on in recent years, and you're shifting your thinking to kind of be able to embrace those?
Absolutely, Billy. Great question, and I do get those questions a lot. And so, just to give you a little bit of context, right? So, what, in my opinion, there are two components within the AI, right? One is the one is the generative AI we just talked about. Other component we call it the predictive AI, right? So, for CVP perspective, we have been doing predictive models until 2006 or 2007 for a while now. So all the things you see for drug busts and other things what CBP is responsible for, we are building models, and this is all under governance and making sure privacy rights, everything is taken care of. Based on that, these models, their job is all developed in-house, right? So these are in developed house because we have to depend on the data which comes out, which comes from within CBP. We generate the data, when we collect information, right? So that data, based on that, we create these models. These models have been serving us in 2006, 2007, and growing, right? So thing which was not there before, the tooling was not there before, right? So the tooling components now, taking these tools, these models, and put it in the cloud, as I mentioned earlier, that was not there before. So we're a lot more flexible, a lot more agile, and we're always agile shop 24/7. That's what we do. Because of that, we're able to produce more and faster the predictive models. We are very good with that. We understand that piece. We have an AI ops process now. We have an ML process, and these ops environment, it's like no different from doing software development, right? Software development have SecDev pipeline. You must be hearing a lot of that. Same concept here for data, especially if AI ML. The thing which has changed for us, as I mentioned earlier, is about 2 years ago, and I've been playing with it for about a year or so, and we are implementing that in different parts of CVP, is the Gen AI component. If you look at Gen AI, there are two components to that. I call it a cognitive area, and other part is called a generation of code, and code generator, the second part, because I'm a techie, nerdy guy, because the second part really excites me a lot, right? But the first part of Gen AI, I believe, is, think about it, is what you call the cognitive AI. Right? Cognitive AI is what? Text to text, typing something in text comes out. Text to images, that means I'm looking at an image and looking at some stuff, something comes out. Text to video, same concept, typing something in and some information I'm getting from the video. And then text to voice, right? Those are four cognitive areas we work on, right? Law enforcement agencies, we have body-worn cameras, we have images, we have videos and all, which we of course can help for using this Gen AI. It's not there before. So think about 7-hour video. If I have to go and look for Sunil by fast forwarding, like God knows how many times, right? So, but now I can type Sunil, can you please find me Sunil in this video? It'll go and start finding Sunil right away within seconds here. So that's a big difference we are seeing from the mission perspective on the Gen AI, on the cognitive pieces, and we are working very closely. I mentioned the document component, text to text, right, earlier in the example I gave you with the officer. That's a great example where I have a policy document, which I need to secure it, and absolutely with what is called zero temperature, which is a terminology for within Gen AI, that means there is no hallucination in there. That's what we do there. And get information out correctly so that, the court of law, it's not Sunil going there, it's actually an officer going there and testifying that information stands in the court of law, right? So that's why we are very, very careful with those kind of things as far as documentation is concerned. We also look at text to images, for example, right? Look at IPR violations, right? If you have you go to New York City or other places, you see fake Gucci bags or bags that people are acquiring, right? So think about that. Take a bag in there and you upload it within Gen AI and do a search on that and do an analysis. It should come back and say this is a fake Gucci bag, right? Those things are not. We had some ideas because we would take a good picture and compare that, but now not the case. These models are so good in determining whether that particular bag has issues, right? Or in this particular case, we uploaded a bag and it found that the thread on that bag something was off. And it found it, says, hey, okay, this is a bad bag, right? This bag is not a genuine Gucci bag, right? That's one of the examples. So we are seeing more and more of that, and we are very excited for us because we can do our mission faster and better for our agents and officers in the field. And the second part is I mentioned the Sunil's nerdy part of things, which is the creating the code component of that. And we are seeing that all over the place, Billy. We're not replacing any software engineers. It's more of an assist. And this assist, what it means is that we have millions and millions of lines of PL SQL code, for example, because of a big database at the back end. And how do we convert some of those slowly? How do you generate test cases? How do you generate use cases? How do you create documentation? How do you take your Jira board and automate some of those things? Those efficiencies are extremely important, believe it is what we are working on. See, our sprint cycle, we call it for development sprint cycle, or software development sprint cycle, is about 2 weeks per every cycle. This is very normal in industry and across the board. Within the 2 weeks, we do what is called these Jira board stories to complete these stories. These stories could be, currently we may be doing 10 or 15. What I'm telling the teams is, that's not enough. With the Gen AI component now, you should be using probably 30, 40 stories, because efficiencies I mentioned earlier within code generation as to with the code assist and everything else. One more thing I want to make sure, even for the Gen AI on the cognitive parts, nobody's getting into place. It's an assist to the officer. It's officer, agent always in charge. AI is only an assist. So that's the basic thing we are working on. So that's where we are, Billy, right now. It's super exciting times. I wish I was 30 years younger, or it'd be even better for me, because I'm like, I'm end of my career here, so that's why.
I totally get it. And I appreciate that latter point with having the agent in the loop, if you will, and having like the human element. And I was going to follow up with that next, because you did mention that, CBP's part of, law enforcement, and there's that mission, and there's the legal proceedings that come out of it. So certainly there's going to need to be some guardrails put into place when using AI for that sort of mission. And I'm curious, how are you going about that? Are you depending on some of your commercial partners to build that in, or is that an internal thing that CBP is doing?
So we have guidelines, all the way from OMB White House to DHS, everything of those guidelines and all the guardrails. They are putting the guardrails in place. Some of them are already in place. So we are following that. We are also looking at making sure these models and all what we are building, we're doing inventory of all the models we have across the agency, making sure that these are in compliance with some of the rules and regulations, what is being put from the governance perspective. So that's only from the human perspective. But we're also looking at tools. This is where the industry can help us, is that looking at tools, how do we create governance tools around these models, right? Because these governance tools can learn faster than humans, right? They keep updated with the latest governance and other memos which comes out for other parts of agencies and within the White House and within OMB and within DHS. So we follow the whole guideline process. And some of these, what I've seen, some of the tools and some of these software, some of the companies who are building some of those things are incorporating some of those I would say the governance model within that. So that is one of the areas what we are looking at. We're also making sure that from privacy and everything else, we are complying with that. And so CBP is we are very, very particular about that. Privacy and PII stuff is extremely critical for us, and we do everything possible to make sure that's protected. And definitely industry is where we depend on a lot of that stuff, to your point, Billy, earlier. But we also have an obligation to make sure that we are following the policies, memos, and everything else, what is being put across from all the way up within the federal government.
Absolutely. Well, we've talked a lot about AI, but I'm sure there's so much so many other technologies on your radar as well. I know biometrics, RPA, and things like that are certainly part of your portfolio, but be curious just to ask you the broad question. What are some of the pressing emerging technologies, or maybe not even emerging technologies, but items on your list that you're focused on outside of AI?
Sure. So I think, as you mentioned, biometric is one of them. But biometric is a feeder into an AI model, right? I mean, biometric is another piece of data point, right? I mean, CBP uses that correctly, and people coming to the United States for non-citizens for the first time, the biometric check happens. And also when they leave the U.S., the U.S. citizens have an option to opt out. But if you must have seen that, you get a green check mark to make sure that you are who you are when you're leaving the country also, right? So biometric is a big place for us. There are other other agency within DHS who also use our biometrics. So we are heavily, it's an API call, people make it. Why have multiple galleries and things like that? So that's a big deal for us. And again, the technology also changing, right? So we are trying to making sure that biometric perspective with a new way of doing things, you'll see more and more from CBP from that perspective. I can't go into some of the details, which is still under consideration, still being evaluated. But that is a big area where we are trying to see, we want to make a easy travel for everybody, right? Seamless travel, make it easy. Some other countries you see have done that, right? So CBP, because we have to be careful who we are, who comes to the United States. Because of that, we have to make sure we are following certain rules and regulations there and everything else. So because of that, we are also looking at technologies which will help to not only process things better, more accurate and everything else. And biometric is an evolving area. So fingerprinting, as you know, and the facial is what we depend on, but the other we don't do retina yet. But all those three, all the two biometrics is what we currently use, and it's a lot happening in that space, right? And again, to your point again, the governance, privacy, everything else is a paramount for us. We follow those rules and regulations to make sure everything is good with that piece. Other component we are working on. I'll be honest with you. When I joined CBP, there was a concept called RPA, which I had no idea what that was. I'm a hardcore software engineer. I say, you know what? I can develop anything. I don't want any help to for the last mile, I call it, right? To making sure the automates pieces which we couldn't automate through writing code. But that's what it was, and we have transformed. I'll be honest with you, within CBP using robotic process automation. Big shop, another large shop within the federal agencies. Other agencies work very closely with them. We help each other. A lot of folks come to my team and asking for how exactly we are doing this. We also have a chargeback model now. So what we do is it's called, we'll teach you how to fish, and then you can fish yourself. So a lot of the RPA stuff is being done within the mission space itself. So they're developing their own model, and our team actually have won some awards from the Secretary's Award and also from the White House Awards for RPA bots, something what we have built, and it's close to 300 bots we have production right now, and it's growing. And I was expecting even more, to be honest with you. But where we are going for this is that we are automating mundane stuff all over the place. I'm saying everything's not AI, right? Mm-hmm. There is an automation itself has intelligence built in there, right? You could think about it, right? So we're using RPA in a bunch of places for every part of. So here I'm happy to announce that majority of the work what we do within CBP is not on the tech side, it's on the mission side. All of our RPA stuff, 95% runs on the mission side, which is what we want. Yeah, which is what we want. And people are getting so much familiar with this now, get better and better, as I mentioned earlier, that they can actually start creating their own bots now. Only thing is bring the money for the licenses, because somebody has to pay us to keep the lights on. Otherwise, everything good to go. And it's very, very beneficial. I mean, we have seen numbers. We have saved like 5,000 hours here or 4,000 hours there. We have saved like 5 or 6 FTEs. So that doesn't mean the jobs are going away, but it's only what it means is just they're getting more efficient, and those people, FTEs, can do something else. And we have seen that, a lot of that. So very proud of that, and our team is very, very good. Kudos to, give a shout out to our team on that one. They do a phenomenal job. The few other areas we're working on besides this on the emerging technologies, we just finished a proof of concept on a concept called PQC, post-quantum cryptography. So what is happening, Billy, is that, as you know, the quantum computer, which is coming on board, especially from China, we are seeing that those can actually start breaking your regular SSL cryptography certificate. That means any website, anything which has a cryptography, which asynchronous cryptography, can be broken. So we just finished a proof of concept, and we just got it signed from a commissioner, an 84-page document which lists us the whole thing. It's an internal document for the government, and government we are sharing with the government folks. We'll be talking to NIST on that and things like that. So we're one of the first agencies to do that. We're very proud of that. So we have taken a small application from my shop and removed the traditional cryptography certificate and added a post-quantum cryptography certificate and made it work and showed how exactly it works. It's a big deal. I think people need to get ready for this. Billy, it's coming. I can tell you that. It's definitely coming. If just for the people's edification, if they want, check out CBS's 60 Minute about 3 or 4 months ago. There was a big article. There's a news thing which CBS 60 Minute aired, and that talks about quantum computing in the PQC, and it's a little scary when you look at that, right? So I would say, from industry perspective, we will need help there. That's one of the areas we're working on. So we work with everybody. We work with few companies, large companies who have this technology in place right now, but we're working with everybody across the board.
So let's end there. You mentioned industry, but of course, PQC, AI, RPA, biometrics, regardless, you're going to need the help of industry to get these missions done. If I'm a listener who wants to help out, how can they go about doing so?
Absolutely. So we are completely agnostic. We work with industry across the board. My boss says the sentence he uses, equity and process. That's what we do across the board. We work from Fortune 50 companies to mid-sized company to small 8A / women-owned, minority-owned across the board. Alaska, everybody across the board we work with. Only thing we ask is, please look at our mission, what we do, and look at how the pain points and what we are going through and help us in that way. We do have a way to access to us. We have created what's called a business connection portal. Really, what I'll do is I'll cut and paste that thing on the chat here. If anybody's interested, you can forward it to them. And that business connection is an external facing portal. Very well done. You register yourself. And then, by the way, it doesn't guarantee that it get to everybody. We get hundreds of requests, but we do a very good job at analyzing of who's coming in and what skill sets they bring. But we have done that across the board. It's not only for IT component, it is also for our other partners. Law enforcement partners also have access. Similar, you can access to them also, same concept. And plus non-IT component also, the Office of Procurement also uses this to reach out to people. That's the best way to do that, because we want to be fair to everybody, right? And everybody who's listening to the broadcast, you want us to be fair to everybody, and that's what we're trying to do. And it's one of its kind within the federal agencies, and other people have reached out to me to asking how we did it. But it's very well done, and please do comment in the comment section also. Give us comments if you have any comments. But that's the one way to reach out to us right now, Billy, is the business connection.
Fantastic. A perfect front door to start that relationship, and a perfect way to end our conversation. So, Sunil, I really appreciate the time. Really interesting stuff from AI to post-quantum, all really pressing topics right now. So I really appreciate the feedback and your perspective on it.
Thank you very much, Billy. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. For more on AI adoption at the CBP, visit fedscoop.com. Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of the Daily Scoop podcast, available on all podcast platforms. If you've already rated the podcast on your platform of choice, thanks so much. High ratings and good reviews of the show help more people to find it. The Daily Scoop podcast is a production of the Scoop News Group in Washington, D.C. Adam Butler and Carlin Fisher help put the show together, and the entire Scoop News Group team contributes. We'll be back tomorrow with more top headlines. Until then, I'm your host, Billy Mitchell. Thanks so much for listening.